Welcome to Startup Hacks, a We Global podcast. We explore the stories and secret strategies that women entrepreneurs use to save time and money when bootstrapping and building their businesses. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapinha, and today I'm excited to welcome Andrea Guendelman. Andrea is a writer, speaker, and entrepreneur who specializes in expansive leadership, helping individuals and organizations unlock potential through openness. Through her deep and varied background from practicing law to tech startups, diversity initiatives to energy work, Andrea has come to embody an inspiring and unique kind of alchemy between the worlds of business and spiritual growth. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you with us. I wanted to start our chat today by asking if you would tell us a little bit about where you're from and, your background and a little bit of your own personal history.
Awesome. Yeah, I love to. And actually, I'm just coming back from where I am, from Santiago, Chile. I just spent a month there, so it was very great to reconnect. I was born in the U.S., but I was raised in Chile, and then I came back to the U.S. when I was 25 to go to graduate school. My father had studied a PhD in the U.S., and so I always had this thing that I had to get, would go to the U.S. to get some part of my education, and I left Chile, and when I left, I didn't think I was living forever, but when I left and I arrived to the United States, and I realized that I had an opportunity to reinvent myself from where I came from, I decided I was never going to go back to Chile. Mm-hmm. And it was very unusual at the time because there were a lot of graduate students from Chile. Chile was growing very much at the time, and people were coming to the US, but they were going back because the opportunities in Chile were excellent. And so it was unusual, especially I was single, I left, I never went back, I went to practice law. I practiced law for 12 years. I worked in New York, Washington, D.C., big law firms for the government. And then at the end of 2011, I decided I wanted to do something more creative. It was very hard to leave the law, but I did. And so that's where my entrepreneurial journey began.
And just out of curiosity, what kind of law did you practice?
I was doing basically project development and also sort of municipal financing and everything related to financing. At the Export-Import Bank, there was also export financing and working capital financing and things like that.
I see. And when you decided to segue into more of a creative arena, was there something that happened or a light bulb that went off that started to get the wheels turning for you?
No, it was mostly I was doing this career. I had decided to study law for a very particular purpose. Is that I was born in Chile, and it was a very chauvinistic society at the time, and my family was very chauvinistic as well. My father was, and I was determined to do. I was determined to do what men did in my generation. And I wanted to be an actress, but I decided that I polled basically all the guys in my class, the good students, and they were all going either to engineering, medical school, or law. I said to myself, if I'm a guy, then what would I do? I would probably go into law. So I did. So that's why. So then I kind of got into this world, and I was a good student, and then I got into Harvard Law School in the US, and all these things happened to me, and I got a very good job in New York, and all these things happened to me that made it very attractive to stay in something that I wasn't enjoying, but it was giving me this external recognition and rewards that were, when you're younger, are very important.
So let's jump fast forward now. So you've decided to move back to Chile, and when you arrived and you decided to pursue work in the startup ecosystem, I know you developed a very interesting social platform, I believe.
Yeah, no, so I never went back to Chile.
Oh, you never did?
No, I never did. I just was in Chile for a month and go on vacations, and I never did.
I see.
I stayed here, and the first thing I did out of, maybe that's why, because the first thing I did when I left the law is that by chance, I created an event in Chile with Al Gore, with musicians, with everybody. And that was a huge event that launched my entrepreneurial career. And then after, and basically that event was huge. We have 10,000 people. We raised over $1 million from the government, and we brought Al Gore, and it was like a very incredible innovation event. And I realized that I could be an entrepreneur. And so when I came back is when I started my first company called Be Visible, which was a social network for Latinas first, then for Latinas and Latinos.
So tell us a little bit about Be Visible.
So Be Visible was came out of my experience living in New Mexico. So my husband and I were lawyers in Washington, D.C. He decided to become a law professor, so we moved to New Mexico. And in New Mexico, I realized I kind of acknowledged myself as Latina. Before I was always like an international person, I felt so. And so in New Mexico, I realized there were all these Latinos, and they were incredibly educated, and they were also getting educated, the kids of the first generation, and that they were not like me, that I had gone to Harvard and an elite school, because many of them wanted to stay in New Mexico, close to family. And so I realized that there was a layer in the US of talent that a lot of people in the fancy kind of world that we move in, sometimes in the startup world and finance world, don't know about much, because they are mostly in cities that are not like New York or Washington, D.C., or not schools that are really well known. And so that there was a layer of talent, and that if we could provide more social capital for that talent, then that talent will have more opportunities. And that was the origins of Be Visible.
And then what happened? What happened with that company?
So that company grew. We created a beautiful platform. It grew to 15,000 users. We ended up with a huge event in San Francisco called Be Woke SF. But eventually, the investors and I decided that we didn't want to focus on doing events, because it was a diversity and inclusion firm. I mean, we couldn't find a business model. So we really closed the company, and I started Wallbreakers with everything I've learned from Be Visible, and basically with a new business plan and a new different model.
Got it. And I'm wondering, when you created Wallbreaker, which I want to get to right away, did you bring over your team from Be Visible, or did you start over from scratch?
I started over from scratch, but we started over from scratch, basically. Yeah.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us then about your second venture.
So Wallbreakers, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So Wallbreakers is a very cool concept. Basically, it's a diversity and inclusion solution for a particular industry, in this case, computer science or software engineers. So what we do is that we wanted to get the guests out of training and promotions, but now we're in training or in hiring, basically. And we source underrepresented talent from computer science majors, degrees from all over the country. And we train them in a 6-week program to get through everything that they need to get to pass the interviews, including the values and soft skills and working group. And we prepare them to like the first day in the job. And then we partner with companies to recruit them. And we are also part of the, we're basically an apprenticeship under the U.S. Department of Labor.
I see. So you're working with professionals who are in the software engineering or tech space, who are outside of the U.S., who need some assistance in order to find great positions, and you're preparing them for that.
Yes, exactly. And we're working with the students in the U.S. and in Mexico.
I see. So I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? You're working in the U.S.?
So we are now working in the U.S. mainly with recruiting
Oh,
candidates from software,
from the U.S., based in
from
the
the
U.S.
US, based in the US and available to work in the US and with the work permit to work in the US.
I see.
But we're also starting to work in Canada and in Mexico.
And the population, is it an underserved population? Is there, are they primarily women? Are they Hispanic? Or is it a mix?
Great question. So it's an underserved population, but it's a mix. That when we say underserved, we include women, most Latinas, Latinx, Latinas and Latinos, Black, first-generation college student, so that will include Middle Eastern and Asian, transgender, any basically anything that that someone considers as underrepresented. It's very broad. We had, it's very, very broad. But yes.
And then you help find them. You help find them positions.
Right. So we partner with companies. So right now we're working mainly with Visa, with Amazon, and with Humo at the time. And what we do is that we partner with them and we go into this sort of like, we create a specific training for them, for the company, a little bit, tailored to what the company is looking for. And we start referring, candidates in batches of 10.
I see. Got it.
And then they get hired, and we had an event last week at the end of the year with Amazon, and from the 10 people they interviewed, 9 got offers. So it was a great result.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it's a very smart business model because you're already partnered with your buyer and you're creating and crafting a whole training program that's curated for their specific needs. So if you have access to the talent pool, which it seems that you do, then it's kind of a natural fit and kind of a win-win, it seems.
We think that it has worked really well. That the employers they cannot believe the level of talent that there is, because with a little bit of polishing, with the 6 weeks training is crucial though. With that polishing, they end up really competitive in the interviews, really good position to start the year. And if they don't get in as a regular engineer, what we're doing with Amazon, for example, is that they get in as an apprentice, because we're an apprenticeship provider. So they get a year to like sort of catch up to a level. And that's a very innovative solution that Amazon basically is doing, and it's great.
So let's talk a little bit about the second phase of our conversation, which is really, as a founder, when you're starting your business, obviously money and time are always those two things that you can never get enough of. And we all have to be incredibly resourceful and creative and strategic. I think you would agree. So in your experience with your two companies, I'm just curious if you could share a little bit about how you perhaps saved time, money, and gained a competitive edge, all while, bootstrapping your ventures, whether it's on the time management side or software and services you may have used, or even kind of self-care strategies, which helped you keep your head in the game, so to speak. Right.
So I think that I do a lot of things about with that. I think one of the problems with entrepreneurship is that there's so much uncertainty that anxiety can sometimes get to you, right?
Yeah.
And it's the anxiety is this fear about the future, this fear of what's going to go. So in this fear and this anticipation and this uncomfortable with being with the unknown, is that we made a lot of mistakes and we like kind of ran ourselves down,
Mm-hmm.
And if you learn a little bit to like trust in the process of life, that where you kind of like follow very closely your intuition, your rhythm, that whatever you throw out there, you wait for it to like, sort of like you throw out there and you try to disconnect with it a little bit. And you do that mindfulness sort of practice all the time, you start becoming happier and lighter, and things come to you more easily and with having more fun. That's what I think. I mean.
And do
in
you
a
find,
nutshell.
do you think that that was really instrumental for you between transitioning from the first startup to the second?
No, I wasn't there yet when I transitioned. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of suffering. I had like all sorts of back pain and all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, it wasn't fun at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at all. But I think right now there's an opportunity to grow in the material plane and in the spiritual plane at the same time, because I don't think you grow in the material plane unless you grow on the spiritual plane, and it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It was interesting. I actually read something today that talked about startups shutting down and how shutting down a startup in the startup world is not like shutting down a company in the corporate world, where many startups, for a variety of reasons, have to go dormant and they have to really pare down to bare bones in order to revamp. It could be your co-founder leaves you, it could be you ran out of money, it could be a variety of reasons, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the company. And if you're a founder who's really willing to fight for the vision that you have before that inspired you to build the company, you just come back stronger and better a couple months later, maybe sometimes even a year later. And I was wondering if you ever had that experience with when you were working with Be Visible and you decided to shut down. Sometimes founders struggle with, should I shut down and revamp, or should I just pack it in and move on?
I mean, that was a great question. It was so hard to shut down. First of all, I talked to all my investors to make sure that they were okay, and they were all super supportive and amazingly supportive. I have had a bad experience with a partner investor at the time, so it wasn't like a great relationship there. So it was a very wise to shut down and start from zero, and everybody understood. And he wanted something else, and I wanted something else, and it was a growth experience for both of us, I'm sure. But I found new partners, new people to work with, and that believed in the concept of that I was trying to get with Be Visible, which was similar, right? It was bringing more underrepresented people to the table, if you will, giving more opportunities, right? This is exactly what I'm doing with Wallbreakers. I couldn't do it with Be Visible because the companies didn't care in general about talent that was underrepresented. They just care about software engineers, maybe, and that has taken us a while. So it's not even that obvious, even in that case. But it was hard. But I followed the advice of people that I trusted in, and they said, like, look, right now you are the company. It doesn't matter if you shut down. Like you are. I mean, you need to start something else. Like need to start from zero. And yeah, so the most important thing is that my investors that were all very close, almost all, basically were very, very supportive and said, yes, please, Andrea, do it. That's good. It's good. I think that's the hardest part for me, was kind of like, I didn't want to disappoint my investors. And that was like, I felt very strong about that, but they were all, 100% supportive.
Well, that certainly makes it a lot easier. And now with Wallbreakers, it sounds like obviously you're post-revenue and financially the company is in solid footing and you're kind of on your way. Do you have a staff now? Do you have a small staff or a large staff?
No, we have staff. We have a small group, but we are, now is the decision whether we scale, like how do we scale, and what type of like financing do we use to scale? Do we use, still our equity, do we use, debt and all these things, all these decisions that have to be made. And so I will not say that we are, super, firm. Everything is firm, because in the startup world, things change so much, and cash is very important. But I think the issue is that it's like, how do you want to scale? And, do you want, kind of those answers are important.
Yeah, and there's important questions because it impacts a lot of your potential growth and also potential wealth as a founder when you start giving away pieces of the business in order to raise more and more capital. So it does have a big impact. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about, I know that you talk often about the spiritual side of things, and I'm wondering how your spiritual life has helped you kind of navigate your work in the startup world.
Yeah, no, I think that a little bit what we were talking about, this thing of trying to be more present, right? And it's something that we're gonna start offering. In fact, with Wallbreakers, we're gonna start offering a wellness program, because new grads, as entrepreneurs, as anyone that is kind of going through a transition that is so huge, and especially from underrepresented backgrounds with COVID, Black Lives Matter, and everything that is happening in the country, they need support, and so it's not only for entrepreneurs, but everything that I learned spiritually, I will want to pass it to even the people that are starting jobs. And I think what it is actually is awareness. I would say that it's the constant awareness and practice of understanding what story you're telling yourself, and that's part of the controlling the anxiety, so when you just focus on the thing at hand, you put your best foot forward, your intention, and you let and release everything else, I think you're happier, right? Then you become grateful, and then you're happier, and I think you have this trust in the process. All these things help you flow more, have better ideas, more in tune with your intuition, make better decisions, know what to do next. All these things that can be blocked at any time by your anxiety and your fear and your over nervousness about things.
100%. If there's an entrepreneur out there who's struggling right now to make some decisions, early stage in his or her company, what one piece of advice would you share with him or with her that you wish someone had told you early on in your journey?
Make it economically viable, because I also had a little bit of the luxury to have, opportunities to do those. It was always uncomfortable, but it was a little bit, in other words, I think never be so uncomfortable that you can't think creatively, because if you're like financially super uncomfortable, then you cannot think super creatively, because you're like stressed out all the time. So even though it's going to be uncomfortable, try to make it the least uncomfortable possible. So keep your job as long as possible. I would say, no, don't quit your job. Let's say I would say, quit your job when you find the business model. Don't quit your job before the business model. If you found the business model, please quit your job. Or if you fundraise, please quit your job. But for women, for people of underrepresented backgrounds, it's hard that, fundraise. I don't know, that was not for everybody's an option, and not at the level that is needed to, create a company, support yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I will add to that, whether you stay in your job or whether you have a side hustle that can be supportive of your, covering your financial commitments, that is clearly really helpful. And I do agree, if you're financially constrained, you're constantly in a state of fear.
Exactly.
So it is really difficult to think clearly, in particular if you have a lot of commitments. Well, I think you raised some excellent points, Andrea, and I believe that there's going to be a lot more that we're going to hear from your exciting venture, Wallbreakers, and I'm so excited for you. And it's always so inspiring when you talk to founders who say, hey, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My first 3 companies crashed and burned. My 4th was a success, because I think it encourages all of us that it's never too late. Keep at it. Sometimes things don't work out the first time, but you learn from them and you move on.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's okay to go get a job in between. It's totally fine. I got a job in between too,
Absolutely.
So it happens.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being on Startup Hacks today. I want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners a way that they could contact you if they have any questions about your company or you. Is there a website you'd like to share?
You can contact me on LinkedIn, Andrea Guendelman, or Wallbreakers, contact@wallbreakers.com, or my website, andreaguendelman.com. Anyway, I would love to talk to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, and tune in next week. We have another great show you won't want to miss on the secret female founder strategies that can save you time and money when building your business. This podcast is brought to you by Women Entrepreneurs Global, the first startup studio and digital do-it-yourself startup platform for women. For more information on our guests, this podcast, and many other female founder programs, please visit womenentrepreneurs.global. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapinha. See you next week.